So we're going to get started. I'm excited. I'm thoroughly excited about the news that we're about to present to the town of Littleton. Everyone knows that the Hitchiner site has been on the market for the last few years, and Peabody and Smith has been in charge of that effort. And Hitchiner, basically made it announced in March of 2015 that it was shutting down, and then it was only a few months later that it transitioned to a complete shutdown. We know at the time that their particular economic climate did not dictate that they would be allowed to continue to stay open in Littleton. And so the building has, in essence, stayed vacant the last 2 years. And so the new owner is a well-known developer. He'll announce some of his initial plans and future prospects for the site. And I think at this point, Peabody and Smith will really talk about the site itself and speak to the transaction. And then at which point I'll circle around after that and really introduce our new owner to the site. So with that, Mary, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Doherty with Peabody and Smith Realty. I was one of the co-listers of the property, which we listed about 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we weren't quite sure what we were going to do with this building, frankly. Many of you in the audience have taken tours of the building, as well as Joe, trying to figure out how best we could make this work for the community. Bino LaMontagne called me one day and said, "Gee, Mary, I think I have a buyer for your property." And I said, "Great, let's show him the property." Mr. Chapman came in, and all of us were scratching our heads of trying to figure out what to do with the property, and Bob came in, took a look at it. The rest is history, I guess. Hitchiner is absolutely thrilled with the buyer. I'm just going to read a quote from John Morrissey, who is CEO of Hitchiner Manufacturing. "We are very pleased with the outcome of the sale of our Littleton facility. It was our hope to be able to turn over the keys to a buyer who would consider the best interests of the community and bring jobs back to the area. The town of Littleton has been a good home for us for over 30 years, and we're pleased to be able to have played a small part in accomplishing this and feel that Mr. Chapman is absolutely the best buyer to make this happen." Thank you.
Mary. So we have a few other people in the audience as well. Brian Ward has a lot of the history of the building. And Brian, at one point during this, well, we'll do it right now, Brian. Why don't you share us a little bit about the history of the building, and then I'll go ahead and I'll introduce Mr. Chapman.
When Hitchiner first announced they were leaving, under the leadership of LIDC, Greg Eastman and Stan Fillion, a task force was put together called the Hitchiner Renaissance Group. And one of the things we heard from the community was the lament that woe is us, Hitchiner's leaving. And so one of the things that I contributed to was to do a history of the property. And it basically came out that while Hitchiner did announce they were leaving, that was the bad news. The good news is that Hitchiner had been in that facility longer than any other tenant. Mr. Chapman buying it, he will be the 8th owner of the property since 1910. This property was originally owned by the town of Littleton, and it was known as Littleton Meadows. And in 1909, the town voted to convey it to an economic development group called the Littleton Realty Company. And their task was to build a 5-story building, which is the oldest part of it, to become a Sears and Roebuck cattle company, to make shoes. At the time, Littleton had 6 Sears and Roebuck factories spread out around Littleton, and the whole idea was to consolidate them in one location, which they did do. They were there until 1925, and then Sears and Roebuck decided to get out of the manufacturing of shoe business. And then There was a knitting mill that was there for 7 years, and then Greg Eastman's great-grandfather, Rudolph Hawley, who had been the last manager of the factory, put together a consortium and bought the property. And Hawley Shoe was there from 1933 to 1952. Then in 1952, Hans Hoffman and Joe Connors purchased the building, and it became Connors and Hoffman, which is what, for many of us, that was what we knew in our youth. However, one of the exciting things of Mr. Chapman acquiring the property is that we have not had local ownership of that facility. When I mean local, the North Country, since 1966. It's been over 52 years since we've had local ownership. And having local ownership to make the decisions on that property is absolutely critical. For the last 52 years, decisions were made elsewhere, and many of them were good decisions, many of them helped us. Hitchiner came to town in 1984 through the leadership of Paul McGoldrick in LIDC. 2001, 14 days on the September 25th, 2001, 14 days after 9/11, Hitchiner announced the first time they were leaving. Under the leadership of Bob Copenhaver of LIDC, a task force was put together, and on Christmas Eve that year, Hitchiner announced that they were staying and 330 jobs were saved. Again, local leadership through LIDC, and while they did announce that they were leaving, the town came together and worked very, very hard to make sure when Hitchiner closed that there was a seamless transition for the employees of Hitchiner. They were our #1 priority, and many of companies in the area stepped up, and many of the employees of Hitchiner were able to get even better jobs than the ones they had at Hitchiner. But with Bob acquiring the property in 2018, we're knocking on the 90th year of that facility, and it's great to have local ownership, and I can't wait to see what he does with it. Thank you.
I always like to have the local guy give the historical perspective on that building, because I sure don't know as much history of Littleton as Brian Wards does. So thank you, Brian. So at this point, just a couple of points I wanted to bring out. I'm filling in for Bino Lamontagne today. Bino, who's our North Country industrial agent, as many of you know, had surgery on Tuesday, and he's at home recovering. And so, but he wanted to be here, Bob, in the worst way. This was a special day for him to see this transaction. So his spirit is with us here today, and then we'll do a nice follow-up with Bino, later in the day via text. I guess the best way. Can't move his arm too well. But so with that, secondly, after this press conference, Bob and company are going to walk down to the Hitchiner site for the media if they want to take a photo of Bob in front of his new building. And so you get a sense of the magnitude, Bob, of the chore ahead of you. So, but with that, just want to talk a little bit about Bob Chapman, the man, and he is someone who really has spent about 4 decades in Berlin, Milan area, working very hard for the people of North Country through his business activities. But at one point a few years ago, he decided he wanted a bigger task, and that's when he took on the former Warsaw mill site in Groveton. It was at that point he was working on site, and it was not long after that he became owner. There is no one in the North Country that I know that really would have taken on the task of redeveloping that site in Groveton. He did it for quite a few years and got it to a point where the site today is now the home of NSA Manufacturing. It took a lot of persistence and determination to get that site redeveloped, and Bob Chapman was a wrecking crew, a single-man wrecking crew to get that thing done. He's provided already numerous jobs for the North Country. He's also owner of the car refreshener in Berlin, which houses the new Canadian company D-Flex, which is its own manufacturing firm and a furniture company. But he's well known throughout Berlin through his salvage and his scrap metal business, Chapman Scrap Metal. And so he's worked in Gorham and Milan and basically most communities in the North Country. But this is his first time doing a project here in Grafton County. So the question that was asked of a selectman in Groveton earlier on was, he asked the question, who is Bob Chapman? And of course at that point, well, he learned about Bob Chapman, his desire to redevelop Groveton. Why would a man who lives in Milan or Berlin go to another community to redevelop a project? He cares about the North Country. His heart is in the North Country, and he looks at the Hitchiner site as another challenge, another way to help out the North Country. He's got a lot of different ideas, mixed use at that location, educational opportunities, incubator opportunities, housing, from potentially a spec building for manufacturing. But again, Bob will explain a little bit about what's going to happen there in the future. But we can all be rest assured that this site is in good hands. But we just attended a luncheon not too long ago at the bailiwicks of local business leaders, and it doesn't happen without partnerships. Partnerships are going to be so critical from the town of Littleton to the regional investment corporations, North Country Council. All those partnerships, both regionally and locally, are going to be important, not for Bob to succeed, but for all of us to succeed here in the North Country, to make sure that that particular valuable property is turned into a gold mine, which I have no doubt it will, under the leadership of Bob Chapman. So with that, Bob, we're about to give you the keys to the city of Littleton here, but more importantly, you're a new owner, and would you like to come up and say a few words, Bob?
Well, now we've got a job ahead of us taking care of that property, and hopefully that we bring some real nice stuff to it. And with the help of Bino and Mike and Councilor Kenny and the support of Littleton, it definitely will happen. Within 4 to 6 weeks, we'll have some major decisions already made, and hopefully everything will come right together and work well. The growth didn't work well. We had good supporters up there. We worked well with the community. They worked well with us, and that's going fantastic. And if we can do the same here in Littleton, we'll be running. We'll have it. So, but we will give an announcement once we come to terms of exactly what's going to happen on the site. And I thank you very much.
So one of the things earlier on, many folks had discussed about that site was could it be a possible site for an expansion of a community college system? And the answer is it's very much on the table. And because of the need in workforce development, and it fits right into the business climate of that location and for this region. So with that, I just wanted Chuck Lloyd, if he's here, is he still here? Just to come up and say a few words about the community college system and really speak to the opportunities.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Chuck Lloyd, President of White Mountains Community College and representing the community college system. For many years we've been in Littleton, almost 20 years. We view Littleton as one of our primary academic centers. We also have our primary campus right now in Berlin. We also have an academic center in North Conway. Over the 20 years in Littleton, we've noticed substantial growth of both programs, enrollment, and partnerships. In our name is community. And the community of Littleton has highly supported us. I'm looking around the room in my last year as president, we've established some partnerships. We've got some things really going. And then I look over at Bob Chapman, who one of my first days as a college president, that name came up. As somebody who's a friend of the college, as somebody who is selfless, contributes to community, and instantly, I thought to myself, he aligns with the mission of the community college. So we're excited for opportunities to come. It's very preliminary right now to talk about what that might look like, but I know at the community college system down in Concord, but also right here in the White Mountains. We are very excited about the possibilities to come, and we stand ready to have that conversation to see what kind of expansion and growth we can continue to evolve for the community college system, and specifically White Mountains Community College. As I think I've mentioned to several of you, but we view Littleton as a college campus, the entire town as a college campus. There are great things for people to do, to stay, to be here, and working very closely with the area high school and CTE Center, keeping our young people here, finding a way to deliver education with them here and put them to work and find great careers for those students. So I think we're all in this for the same reason, and I'm just very happy to have Bob Chapman at the helm. I think there's nobody else better positioned to take on that facility and this task. So we thank you, and we stand eager to partner very closely. So thank you all very much.
Bob just wanted to mention that he wanted to thank Hitchiner for their cooperation throughout this transaction period, that they were absolutely wonderful to work with. And so apparently negotiations went well, and you're now owner of that building. And Mary and Andy from Peabody and Smith, who really facilitated this whole transaction and did a wonderful job. I would also like to add, much like Chuck just indicated, the importance of partnership. The state is going to partner with the town of Littleton, as it always has and will continue to do, but they're also going to partner with Bob Chapman and the other stakeholders with regards to this piece of property. The state does it in many ways. They can do it through funding, they can do it through permit, expediting permits, or they can do it through the regulatory side. That's a site that has a long history. There's a lot of needs and nurturing to that site that the state will have to support along with the local municipality. I'm sure there'll be a lot of visits to the planning board, Bob, and hopefully not too many visits to the zoning board, but and then obviously there's a wonderful trail system that is not too far off the beaten track there that Littleton wants to expand, so that I can't imagine a better location to work with in Littleton for the coming years than that site, that former Hitchiner site. I just think it's a wonderful location. And my simple involvement has just been to act as a facilitator, to get people together to do good things, because at the helm is a good man. He's got the North Country at his heart, and anytime I look around and Bob Chapman's involved in something, it's always for the betterment of the North Country. And that just makes guys like me who are in elected office, it makes their job so much easier to work with people like Bob. So with that, we can ask maybe a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Is there any questions at all from folks?
Do you see any portion of the building coming down, or is your plan to keep it as is?
We're not sure at this time.
So the question was, does Bob see any portion of the building coming down? And Bob said, we're not sure at this time. Okay.
It's a good possibility.
It's a good possibility, because what's he do? He knocks down buildings. But he also can look at it and keep it up too. Any other questions, or? Wow. Any other comments? Bob will be here. I'll be here. We'll be here to mingle and answer any other follow-up questions. And we're going to go to the site soon after to take a picture with the new owner. Bob, can you come back up for one more time? I know Bina would want to say this, but Bob is someone who took the task of the Groveton site, which was an unbearable site to take on, and made something happen. Okay? I've seen him in other situations where his persistent determination, dedication of hard work pays off. It might take a few extra months, an extra year, but it's because of the Belichick, Coach Belichick kind of attitude, which is do your job. Bob is always doing his job, and he's doing it the right way. So Bob, I just want to thank you for taking on this challenge, and because it's a commitment, but your partners are out here are willing to work with you. Thank you, Bob. So with that, we're done with the press conference, and Bob's over there to answer your questions, and then we're going to head over to the Hitchiner site. Thank you for all coming, by the way.